So what is poverty really? Is it just about not having enough money, or is there more to it? Today, we're going to try and break down one of humanity's biggest challenges, taking a journey from the stories of real people all the way to the global data that shapes our world.
Okay, let's dive right in by meeting the people behind all the numbers. Because, to really get a handle on poverty, we have to start by understanding what it actually feels like for the people living it every day.
And these two images, wow, they just capture the two different worlds of poverty perfectly, don't they? On one side, you've got the crowded, relentless struggle of a city slum, and on the other, the quiet, isolated hardship of a rural village. Totally different places, but it's the exact same fight for survival.
So, meet Ram Saran. He works as a daily wage laborer, which means his income is never ever guaranteed. Imagine this. Him, his wife, and their 4 kids are all crammed into one single rented room. His wife cleans houses, and his oldest son even works at a tea stall, all just to help the family scrape by. And even with everyone working, a full meal is often a luxury they just can't afford.
Okay, now let's shift gears and head out to the countryside to meet Laka Singh. His family doesn't own any land, so they're forced to do odd jobs for the big farmers in the area. The work comes and goes, and get this, sometimes he doesn't even get paid in cash. It might just be a little bit of wheat or some vegetables, just enough to get through another day. For his family, something as basic as medicine or even a bar of soap is completely out of reach.
So these stories, they really show us, don't they? Poverty isn't just about an empty wallet. It's about not having a safe place to live, it's about poor health, it's about seeing opportunities pass you by, and it's that constant nagging feeling of being helpless. And that brings up a really important question.
Right. If it's not just about the money in your pocket, then how in the world do you measure something so huge and complicated? Well, social scientists have given us a few key tools to help us get our heads around it.
Well, the classic way to do it is with something called the poverty line. You can think of it as an imaginary line in the sand. It sets a minimum threshold for income. If what you earn or what you can buy falls below that line, you're officially considered poor. It's a simple idea, but it's a really powerful place to start. But it gets deeper. There's this idea of social exclusion. This is all about being locked out of the kind of opportunities that other people just take for granted. Imagine being turned down for a job just because of your background, or your kids having to go to a rundown school just because of where you live. It creates this vicious cycle that is incredibly difficult to escape.
And the last piece of this puzzle is what we call vulnerability. This is really about how close you are to falling off the edge. For some people, like a landless farmer or a single parent, one single disaster, a bad harvest, a sudden medical bill, is all it takes to push them into poverty. They're basically living on a knife's edge, with absolutely no safety net to catch them.
Okay, so now that we have these tools in our toolbox, the poverty line, social exclusion, and vulnerability, let's zoom in on India's story. Let's see what the data actually tells us about its fight against poverty.
And what we find is, honestly, it's staggering. Using a more modern way of measuring called the Multidimensional Poverty Index, India's poverty rate plummeted from 25% down to just 15%. And that was in only 5 years. That is a massive leap forward. But what does that percentage actually mean? Let's talk about real people. We're talking about 13.5 crore. That's 135 million people who were lifted out of poverty in a remarkably short amount of time. That is a truly historic achievement.
But, and this is a big but, the story isn't the same everywhere. The national average might be 15%, but the reality on the ground can be wildly different. You look at a state like Bihar, and a third of the population is still living in poverty. Then you look at Kerala, and it's just 1%. That huge gap shows you that the path out of poverty looks very different depending on where you are in the country.
This progress didn't just happen overnight. It's not some flash in the pan. When you look at this table, you can see a really clear, steady decline over decades. I mean, think about it. From almost half the country being in poverty in the early 90s, down to 15% today. This is the result of a long-term, determined effort that has spanned generations.
So, we've been using this term multidimensional poverty. What does it actually mean? Well, it's a way of looking beyond just income to see the real-life struggles people are facing. As you can see from these icons, it's like a checklist. Does a family have enough food? Are their kids in school? Do they have clean fuel to cook with? Or safe water to drink? Or electricity? It gives us a much richer, more complete picture of what poverty truly is.
So India's story is incredible, for sure. But poverty is a global fight. So let's zoom out one last time and see how all of this fits into the bigger, worldwide picture.
To compare apples to apples all around the world, Big organizations like the World Bank need a single yardstick. And right now, the official line for extreme global poverty is living on less than $2.15 a day per person.
And this chart, wow, it tells such a powerful story of progress. Since 1990, the number of people living in extreme poverty has dropped like a stone, especially in East Asia. But it also shows us where the front line of this battle is today. The forecast shows that by 2030, the vast majority of the world's poorest people will live in sub-Saharan Africa.
And this is the world's battle plan. The United Nations' 17 Sustainable Development Goals are like a global to-do list for creating a better future. And what's right at the very top? Goal number 1, no poverty. That's a pretty clear statement about our collective priority.
Okay, so seeing that global plan brings us right back home. Because progress like we've seen in India, that doesn't just happen by accident. It's the result of a clear strategy. So, how'd they do it?
Well, you can't solve a problem if you don't know where it came from, right? And in India, the roots of poverty run deep. You've got the long-term effects of colonial rule, decades of slow economic growth paired with fast population growth. And on top of that, massive gaps between the rich and the poor. It's a complex mix.
So India's strategy was basically a two-pronged attack. The first part was all about boosting economic growth, the idea being that a rising tide lifts all boats. But since that doesn't always reach everyone, the second part was a whole series of targeted programs designed to give direct help to the people who need it the most.
So we've seen this incredible progress, right? Millions and millions of people have been lifted up. But the journey, it's not over just because someone crosses an imaginary income line. In fact, the biggest challenge might still be ahead.
And this is where a quote from Mahatma Gandhi really hits home. He said, "India would be truly independent only when the poorest of its people become free of human suffering." This reminds us that this isn't just about economics, it's about human dignity.
And that gets at a much bigger idea, human poverty. It's the difference between just surviving and actually thriving. It forces us to ask the bigger questions. Do people have access to good schools and healthcare? Can they find a stable job? Do they feel safe and respected in their communities? Which leaves us with one last, really big question to chew on. We've gotten pretty good at measuring what people have, but the true end of poverty has to be about what people can do and who they have the chance to become. How do you measure a person's potential, their chance to live out their dreams? That's the question that will define the next chapter in this global fight.